Richard Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Happy Tuesday, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Richard Skipper Celebrates. I'm Richard Skipper. I auditioned for the part and I got it. Anyway, thank you for being here tonight. I am all about celebrating artists and their body of worth. And I've said this before, and I will say it again. It's very easy for me to celebrate artists because I love being on both sides of the footlights. But it's even better for me when the artist that I'm celebrating also happens to be a friend. And I'm going to bring her on. Judi Mark happens to be, I can honestly say, one of my top 5 friends. Oh. And I put her in that category because we actually talk on the phone. And if the pandemic was not happening, we would also get together from time to time. Judy, before we jump in and we celebrate you and all the wonderful things that you've done and will continue to do, I want to ask you, how are you doing really in the midst of this crazy world we find ourselves in right now?
I'm doing great. I never had so much time to do what I want to do. All the time that I spent going from one end of the town to the other, an hour to get anywhere, I have that hour consolidated into my day. So I can do 10 times more than I usually do. It's great.
Well, I'm all about creativity, and I want to know, first of all, let's go back. It has been, I think today marks 229 days since Broadway shut down. All the theaters, and that, of course, includes Cabaret and all of the venues that you perform in. What did your schedule look like when this all happened?
In April, I lost 5 gigs. Wow. I was very disappointed. I was looking forward to all of them so much. And then I just had to deal with it. That's all. I just couldn't go back to New York. I couldn't quarantine myself for 14 days in my apartment. So,
now, if you don't mind my saying so, and I hope I'm not giving away too much information, you also have a home in Florida and you have a home in New York, and you have not been back to New York since before March. When did you go down to Florida?
Last November.
So it's been almost a year.
Right. I had some gigs down here, so I had to make it down here quickly. And my apartment in Manhattan is really small. As you know, you've been there. Mm-hmm. So, and the place I have here is so much bigger, and I have my mom's piano here. So I'm having a really good time going from room to room and doing my thing. And when I want to do yoga, I roll out the mat in the bedroom, then I do Pilates, then I sing, then I go to the piano. I mean, it's good for me.
Well, I love the fact that you're remaining creative during this time. I mean, for me, I tell everyone I'm busier than I've ever been in my entire life. I'm not making any money at it, but it's the joy of what I do that keeps me going. And it gives me a focus. I love being focused on everyone else instead of myself, such as yourself. So this gives me the opportunity to go in that direction. But I want to ask you, with everything that's going on, do you have a structure to your days, or do you let things just unfold as they unfold as the days progress?
Well, I have certain appointments that I schedule in my book, usually. Like I know tomorrow morning at 8:30, I'm going to be doing Pilates via Zoom. So I know that's going to take an hour, and I try to pace myself. So I have breakfast and take care of my physical health. That's very important. And then I definitely vocalize every single day. And I'm working on new music all the time with my coach and a pianist. And so I've scheduled that in. Now I'm taking up cooking. I mean, I'm not a cook. I could never cook in Manhattan. I mean, let's face it. If I wanted to bake something in the oven, I had to take those pans out of the oven and put them in my foyer Can you imagine?
Jim Caruso, who I love, Jim Caruso actually did something where he uses his oven as a storage bin for his sweaters.
Exactly.
And anyone who doesn't know New York doesn't get it. I mean, luckily for me, as you know, I live outside of the city, and I live in a house, and I've got a backyard, and I do. My heart goes out to everyone who is in a studio apartment who doesn't have the luxury of getting out and enjoying the things they do. And where exactly in Florida are you? Are you close to the beach? Do you get to the beach often? Do you even like to go to the beach?
Well, yeah. I mean, the beach is beautiful. I live in Delray Beach, but I don't live I live close enough to it that I could go there every single day, but I choose not to because, you know, I mean, I used to be a sun worshiper, and now I just don't want to do that to myself anymore. I don't think it's, you know, it's not healthy, and there's better things to do than lay around in the sun, but it's truly beautiful here. I mean, there's no comparison to living in a small apartment to having all of this palm trees and skies, and it's gorgeous. So yeah, I'm cool with that. Yeah.
Right. Now, Judy, I want you to think of this almost as this is your life experience. My goal tonight is to learn all the things about you that I don't already know, and to share that with our viewers as well. But before we get there, I have a clip of you in action. And this, well, we'll talk about the clip afterwards, but Bruce Bider, you know, producer, director, is at the helm of this. Jocelyn Weston is viewing. She says, you look and sound great. So Jocelyn, this is for you to take us back to these wonderful memories that we all have here. Judi Mark.
Everybody believes that trouble won't stay if you shake it away. When they hold a revival way down south, everybody with cares and troubles their day tries to shake it away, shaking the blues away, unhappy news away. If you are blue, it's easy to shake off the cares and troubles. Tell them the blues to go, they may refuse to go, but as a rule they'll go if you shake them away. Do you like the voodoo do, listening to a voodoo melody? They shake their body so to and fro with every shake, a lucky shake. Remember there's a way to shake your cares away.
And that, of course, is Judi Mark, and that was from South Shore Theatricals. That was The Melody Lingers On. I was lucky enough to be in the audience for that show. And you may have caught a glimpse of her just exiting just as Judy was coming on, and that was the one and only Catherine Crosby. I want to give a shout out to Bruce Biter for the work that he does, because what is really wonderful about the work that Bruce does is he brings these celebrities in, Marilyn, Maye, Anita, Gillette, Frank Basile, Judi Mark, Richard Skipper, and he gives all of these artists a chance to appear with all of the local people from the area and the children. And I think it's really all about taking these gems like Irving Berlin and moving them on to a whole new generation. How did you get involved with Bruce to begin with South Shore Theatricals?
Well, let's see. I was introduced to him, and I was looking for a musical director at the time. Goes back way back. And we started talking, but he didn't have time because he's so involved with the high school kids and the elementary school kids that he couldn't do that. And he lives in the same place. He lives on Long Island, where my friend lives, and who I've been with for many years. And so it was convenient for me to be out there and work with him. But we didn't end up working as in that kind of relationship. And he asked me if I would be in his show. So the first show was, let's see, posters up there, A South Shore Summer. And that's how I met Anita Gillette.
And Leroy Reams was in that show, if I remember correctly. Am I right?
No, he was not.
Okay. That was the celebration of summer and beach music? Or am I confusing it with something else?
No. A South Shore Summer that had Frank Basile, Richard Halpern, Anita Gillette, but it was a lot of songs.
And how many shows have you done with Bruce? I know that we did the Jerry Herman celebration.
I don't know, 3 or 4, I think. 4, maybe.
So I want to go back to the beginning. You were originally from Chicago, and you grew up in a musical family. Can you tell us a little bit about your parents and what each of them did, and about your exposure to the arts growing up? I find it incredible. I didn't have that, and I'm talking about parents that were supportive of pursuing the arts.
Mm-hmm. Well, my mother was a classical pianist, and in fact, I have her piano here. It's near and dear to me.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was a young girl, she took me for gymnastics lessons, and that's how I started to move and somersaults and things like that. And then when she'd play the piano at home, I would improvise with her, and she saw that I had a real strong feeling for dance.
Mm-hmm.
She and my dad enrolled me in ballet. Let's see, I had tap lessons, point lessons. I was so young, I didn't appreciate it. Singing lessons, dramatic lessons, and they gave me every kind of lesson that they could possibly, throw on me to see what stuck. But I have to say, there was definitely the ballet or the dances, because my mother was so graceful. And when she played the piano, she had such beautiful movements, hand movements. And I would watch her in awe, and I would try to imitate her through dance and what she would play. And it, it was a great feeling. Let's see. And then as I grew up, my father was a recording engineer, but he was an electronic engineer before he became involved in recording.
And do you have brothers and sisters?
I do, but they came later.
Okay.
So I was number 1, but that had its good points and its bad points.
And are they in the arts at all?
No, they're not. My sister's a very talented artist, but she doesn't do it. She's in financial business.
So I'm always interested when I'm talking with artists about, and first of all, I use the word artist freely because for me, an artist is someone who really applies themselves to their craft, who really works at the work that they're doing. And knowing you the way that I know how hard you work at what you do. What was the defining moment for you when you said, this is it, this is the career path that I want to follow?
Well, it didn't quite go that smoothly. I mean, I pursued dance, but as my parents were layering the things that they wanted me to learn, like horseback riding and modeling, and then I had schoolwork, and it became too much. So I had to back off of it for a long time, and then we moved from one suburb to another suburb, and that was a whole nother acclimation to.
Were your parents open to the fact that you wanted to push away from it, or did they think you were being obstinate?
Well, here's the thing. My parents gave me two messages. They wanted me to perform. They loved what I did. They loved the fact that I'd come home from school and I imitated every single teacher. I used to make, talk like my name is Mrs. Lee. And I would make my mother laugh. And she said, you should do commercials. You're so funny. And it felt so good to make her laugh. So I thought, okay, I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do that, whatever they like. But then said, no, we don't really want you to do this because, you have to prepare yourself for a different kind of life, like marriage and children and all that. But I don't want to do that. I want to dance and sing and have fun. And I used to they pushed me into the backyard and made a curtain and I was putting on my own shows when I was 8 years old. No kidding. It was really fun. And
mom, a Mama Rose type? Was she a stage mother?
No, they just wanted to have fun with me because I was their kid and they wanted to see what I could do. Mm-hmm. And when I saw that I was making them laugh and I was, they were enjoying it, they were encouraging me. But then they said, you shouldn't do this for a living. You shouldn't do this. So I was very, very confused. Mm-hmm. And that was a whole nother stage of my life. There's so much to this story. So I don't want to tell too much unless you ask me.
Well, this is your chance to tell whatever you want people to know about this.
Okay, well, I'll just fast forward. I went to college. I majored in education because... Okay,
I am going to back up. Before we get to college, I want to know, number one, I know your mom was a classical pianist, but what was the other types of music that you were listening to at home? Who were the artists that you aspired to be like and said, I really like what they're doing? And did you do school plays in high school or in grammar school?
Every time my teacher would have a birthday, from the time I remember, I was always doing a performance for them. And there weren't any school plays in elementary school. There were little shows. I don't remember, but I always performed in elementary school. And I did musical theater in the neighborhood, a neighborhood theater company. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to tell you about my father because my father was an electronic engineer who had a very strong interest in recording. So he opened up a business and eventually it ended up being near Davenport's in Chicago. He had a recording label, International Recording Company. And on the top floor of it, he would, and I'm really fast forwarding, he would have artists recording there. But he never recorded me because I wasn't showing great inclination towards a singing career. Mm-hmm. I was focusing on the dance. That's what made me move. So okay. Now I'm going into the other phase, or do you still have questions?
Go ahead. Well, I do have a question about that. I mean, looking back now, because you've devoted, I would say probably the last 5-6 years, maybe longer, to doing the cabaret work, and you are singing on stage. Do you regret the fact that you did not go into the recording studio and record with your father at that time?
Well, sure. Looking back, we can, I don't think there's anybody that wouldn't be able to say, oh, I wish I would have done that, or I should have done this, or, but I think it's very hard for a young person who doesn't really know what lies ahead to make a decision like that. Well, I'm going to structure my day so I get a little of this, I make sure I plan ahead, because they weren't encouraging that. They didn't think it was a good idea for me to try to go into the business. My father always said show business was phony. It's a phony business, Judy. I don't want you to go into it. I'd say, what do you want me to do? Be a teacher. Be a teacher. So, I went to college and I majored in education and minored in dance.
Now, where did you go to college?
Southern Illinois University.
Okay.
And I started the pom-pom dancers. That was great fun. I loved that. Anyway. So after college, I went down to Florida because my grandmother was down there, and she was a very, very interesting woman. She was into real estate. She bought an apartment building in South Beach, and I would spend all my free time down in South Beach. And oh God, I met all the New Yorkers there. They would go to the 48th Street Beach, and it was great fun. And she told me, it's better down here. You should be here. So after I graduated, I went to Florida, and that's where I met my husband to be, who was a medical student. And that's a whole nother chapter. It was an arranged marriage.
Wow.
It was an arranged marriage, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, how long were you married, if you don't mind my asking? And I've got a reason for asking.
10 years.
Okay, and during that 10-year period, did you continue to pursue your passion, or did you put it on hold?
No, as soon as I got down to Florida, I started to dance with a company called Fusion. And Billy Kirpich from the New Dance Group in New York was the founder of it. And so I clearly defined myself as a dancer to my husband, my to-be,
Mm-hmm.
so that he wouldn't, say, what is this, an afterthought or something,
So it didn't come as a surprise to him.
Yeah, he knew who I was, and I was always dancing. So I love it. It's my soul. So anyway, we got married. I did do some teaching down in Florida. I didn't plan on teaching dance, but I ended up teaching dance. And then we moved to California because he had to do his residency in neurology at UCSD. And I started working on my MFA, Master's of Fine Arts in Dance and Choreography, at a performance school, United States International School of Performing Arts. And I was doing okay there. I mean, California's a different vibe than Chicago, than Florida. It's a totally different vibe. And my cousin, who was a soloist with the Martha Graham Company, happened to come in with the company and dance down in San Diego. So when I saw my cousin, oh my God, that was it. That was the turning point you're asking me about.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't take my eyes off of her. She was, if she's listening, I mean, I always tell her that, and she's so shy about it, but she was a phenomenal dancer. And Martha Graham technique was, to me, was just awesome. So she said, you have to come to New York and study at the Martha Graham School. They're having a June course there. So I went there with my husband. And by the end of the June course was so hard. They gave me a sky.
I want to go back because I am always interested in the little details. As you're watching her on stage, is your husband by your side or were you by yourself? And either way, when you had that conversation with your husband and you said, oh my God, this is what I want to do. How did that unfold? I mean, obviously you said you wanted to go to New York to study and he came to New York as well. Was that an eager coming to New York or was it reluctant on his part?
Well, you know, he was doing well in San Diego. He was doing his residency And he probably would have started his medical practice there had it not been for that moment when I saw my cousin, and everything changed for me. I wanted to give up my college studies because there was no reason to do that. I wanted to dance in New York. I always knew I was going to be in New York. I just didn't know how it was going to happen. And so he was a really wonderful man, this person that I was fixed up with for marriage.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. So he said he agreed to go to New York and take a fellowship at.
Now, did you have a place to come to when you came to New York?
No.
Where did you start out?
No, we just came for the summer for him to do his fellowship, and I did the course at Martha Graham.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had to go back to California with him because that's where we lived. Mm-hmm. We rented during that time. We rented an apartment, a studio. And I didn't know what to do with myself. I went back to school. I started my own dance company there. I was, creating choreography. And all I could say to him is, oh, I got to get back. I really want to go to New York. Oh, please, let's go to New York. Please, please. And I finally convinced him. So we moved to New York and we rented. That's another story, a very interesting story. We were looking at lofts in Soho because I thought it would be a cool thing to have like a 3,000 square foot loft in Soho, which I could make, half of it would be a dance studio and the other half would be living space. And we could be like, cool Soho people. No, he didn't want to take a freight elevator to the 4th floor.
I miss those lofts.
Yeah. You froze on me, Richard. You froze.
See many of them anymore. It's just the Ethernet. It's Mercury is in retrograde, so that's why these things will happen. It's happening on CNN. It's happening on MSNBC. It's happening on Fox. It's happening everywhere. Am I no longer frozen?
You're warm as ever.
Oh, good. So anyway, what I was saying is that when I first came to New York and I went to those loft apartments, you don't see many of them anymore, but they were incredible apartments. So I could only imagine there was also this romanticism surrounding all of that, to being a quote unquote struggling artist in New York City and living that kind of a lifestyle. So where did you end up going?
So we almost bought an apartment for $40,000 in the Dakota where John Lennon was living.
You lived in the Dakota?
No, we were looking at real estate. Okay. It was fantastic. I wanted that apartment. It was like huge. So the ceilings were so high, we could have had like 3 floors. But we didn't do it because he wanted to live in a safe neighborhood. He was afraid for me. He was really a nice man. Mm-hmm. And we had an Irish setter that we had brought from California who was, was pulling me down the street with the doggy bags, and it was, crazy. So we rented on 83rd and 2nd in a safe building in a great neighborhood. And I did my thing and he did his thing. And before you know it, we were doing our things going this way. Mm-hmm. Wasn't really meant to be. So it wasn't.
Was it no separation is easy. Let's face it. But was it seemingly an easy transition for you because of the path that you were on?
Nobody could understand why I would want to be a struggling artist, mm-hmm. especially a dancer. They just don't get it because we don't make any money, just like the cabaret singers. It's the mm-hmm. same kind of mentality. It's more about the art than it is about the money. And people were saying to me, but you have such a charmed life. You're married to a doctor. And how could you think about, anything else but going to tease? Mm-hmm. And I just couldn't relate to it. I really couldn't. I just couldn't. So we split up, and then after that,
And did he move back to California, or did he remain in New York as well?
no, he remained in New York,
Okay.
but not in the apartment. So.
And the work started. How did the work begin? And I know that you became a dance instructor. You came up with a lesson plan for dancers that, based on conversations I've had with you, I think was unheard of at the time that you created this. Am I correct?
Yes, but so much happened before that. I mean, I was out there auditioning for Broadway shows and off-Broadway shows, and I was working with Danny DeVito on one show and many things. It wasn't just modern dance anymore, because I thought when I got back there that I would maybe slip into the Martha Graham company, but no, you just don't. You get an opportunity, and if you're not there to take it, that's it. So I had to find other things. So I did all kinds of things. I mean, I went back to, I did one show that convinced me that I have to take my voice more seriously. So I started doing that, and I was doing some cabaret as well. But after knocking around for a few years, I realized that this doesn't make sense to me. I don't
I
want
want to talk about the steps that surround all this. First of all, did you ever have any survival jobs that were outside the world of dance?
No, actually, I did not. I did not, because when I got divorced, I had a settlement. So I was living off my settlement.
Well, that's good. That's a good thing.
Yeah,
That's a good
though.
thing. And you were still auditioning. And I know, based on your last show that you did, Laughing Through Life, that you had all of these incredible experiences working on cruise ships, doing things in Florida. You also appeared on Miami Vice, which was popular in the 80s, and you were working on that as well. How were all of these things happening? When did what do you consider to be your first artistic break in New York? And what was your first professional break in New York?
I think my first professional break in New York as an actor and a choreographer was on a show called Three by Pirandello. It was off-Broadway. Danny DeVito produced it and starred in it. There were 3 Luigi Pirandello plays. And I came to the audition dressed like a Sicilian peasant woman, and because that's what they were looking for. And at the time, that's what I looked like. And he picked me to be just that, the Sicilian peasant woman. And then he found out that I could dance, so he asked me if I would choreograph the tarantella and the other small dance parts that were in the show. So I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. And Rhea Perlman was there, and Judd Hirsch. So I got to know some very interesting people. And then another big break, I was dancing with a modern dance company, and they decided to do something at the Kennedy Center. So artistically, that was a real thrill too. None of these things last long. There's like a week run or a 2-week run, and then you're back to the auditioning again, which is the thing that broke me, because I just didn't want to do that. I felt like
when the pandemic first started, I interviewed Donna McKechnie, who I know is a dear friend of yours. And Donna said at that point that, the fact that those of us who are in this business are always between gigs, or, there are these moments where we get we, I think, can deal with what we're going through right now a lot easier than those people who have a 9-to-5 structure in their life. Was there ever any point in your life where you had a 9-to-5 job?
Well, when I decided to go into teaching, because I had it, and that I had to have a job, I had to support myself, but it was dance education. And at that time, they did not have more than 4 or 5 dance programs in the New York City schools. And so I literally had to knock on doors. Would you like a dance teacher? I tried to sell myself to principals to create a program. And that's how it started. And I felt like a pioneer. And I was in a lot of ways a pioneer. I stayed with that job for many, many years. I created dance programs in the New York City public high schools and sequential programs in the high schools. So they had Modern Dance 1 the first year, Modern Dance 2 intermediate the second year, the third year ballet the first semester, jazz the second semester, and the fourth year was the choreographer's ensemble. That was my way of keeping these kids interested in taking Miss Mark's dance class. 4 years. There weren't rotating teachers. It was just me. And after the day was over, and you talk about 9 to 5, mine was more like 8 to 4:30, because there was rehearsals after school, then driving back to Manhattan from, in this particular instance, Brooklyn, and then taking a dance class at 6 o'clock to keep my skills up. And it wasn't just ballet. I had to take, jazz. I had to keep ahead of these kids because, they were fast learners and they were like sponges. Oh, show me how to do this. Show me how to, and I grew to love them. I tell you, I didn't have any kids, but these were my kids. I spent many years bringing up other people's children. But it was the love of my life because it was dance. And 5 classes a day, all dance, then rehearsal, then my own class. And, I did that 5 days a week.
And obviously you love teaching, but were you able to also pursue your career as an entertainer yourself while this was happening?
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, I always had my eye out for an audition, and if it felt like when I did Glitter, Mariah Carey's first film, when I was cast in that, I was able to do it because it was shot in Manhattan, and I could take a day off from school. I don't remember even if I had to. It might have been, it was an easy thing to do. I did some cabaret at Judy's down in Chelsea.
Well, let's go there. How did that get started for you? How did you break into the world of cabaret?
I was in an Off-Broadway show called Let My People Come. You might have heard of it.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I know the show. Good for you.
I was cast as the modern dancer. So I enjoyed doing that, but
how long were you with that? That show ran forever.
Yeah. I had to sing in that show because you couldn't just dance. There was ensemble numbers and a solo song. And I'm too embarrassed to tell you what the name of the song is because it's just horrendous, If
anyone's interested, you can Google the show and look it up. But
yeah, but I don't want to talk about it. But
no, it ran for a long time.
It did, but I wasn't in a long time because there were things in this show that I would not do. And the producer said, you have to do it. And I said, well, I'm not. And
now, if you were like me, when I first came to New York, and maybe this will answer the question, I auditioned for everything. I auditioned whether I was right for it or not. I actually went to an open call for Ain't Misbehavin'. And then I said, what are you doing here? We're not even going to see you. I auditioned for everything. So, did you know what you were auditioning for when you auditioned for this show?
Yeah, but at the time I was such an artiste that it could have been Isadora Duncan. It didn't matter to me. The body was my temple, and that's how I took it. So I did it, and then when I had to sing, I said, "Oh my God, I better get serious about my voice because I can't just sing like this. Just sing like Marilyn Monroe. Put your head." And I thought, no. Because I can't audition without having technique. So I started studying vocal technique seriously.
And who did you study with at that time?
The first one that I remember studying with was Tom Rosinski.
Okay.
He taught at the American Dance Machine. I liked him a lot. He really knew what he was doing. But unfortunately, he was one of my friends and teachers who passed away from AIDS.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah. And then there was let's see, I studied with Luba Cheretsky for a long time. She was an opera singer. Recently, there's been so many. Phyllis Lynn was another one I studied with. Thurman, what was his name? Thurman something. He worked with all the Broadway kids. I worked a bit with Larry Woodard.
Oh,
Yeah.
lovely.
Who's the other guy downtown? Not James Ballowall, his friend. I can't remember, but recently I worked with Laura, oh God, what's her last name? Celia Burke introduced me to her. Laura, I studied with her, and I was learning from each one of these teachers, but when you're teaching dance like I was teaching, I couldn't really go back and start auditioning for Broadway shows again.
We're doing Let My People Come, and what I want to know the circumstances that led you to Judy's. And when you mentioned Judy's, there were two locations in New York. Was it the original that was right next to the Algonquin, or was it the one that was 18th and 8th?
18th and 8th.
Okay. So you got your first show that was done there. And of course, that was a great stage. I did my show there for a long, long time. It's a much more intimate art form. Was it an easy or difficult transition for you?
Well, before I went to Judy's, I did some of those local places, Jason's, and there were other places. And I was even singing at the Sign of the Dove, which was not a cabaret room. It was just a beautiful, beautiful restaurant.
Oh, I loved it. Absolutely. Upper East Side, yes.
Very classy place. But Judy's, I thought, was very classy too. They had a beautiful curtain and a setup, and yeah, it was more intimate.
And tell me about your first show, the first time that you performed a show in Cabaret, and what was the process of you putting that show together?
Well, the one at Judy's, I had a director. He was the drama teacher at the school where I was teaching dance. So he directed me for that. But before that, when I was doing those other shows, when I did the Sign of the Dove, there was no director. I just learned songs. I learned songs and I sang them with the band, the house band. I mean, it was a jazz band, basically. Just a, like noisy place. I don't care for that kind of environment. I prefer a sit-down audience that's actually listening. But at that point, it didn't really matter because I was getting paid and I was having fun and I was doing, songs that new songs, old songs. And the little cabaret shows that I did, they were also kind of edgy. They were edgy. I remember singing a song about a black cat. So it wasn't just physical, those songs. They were all songs that were related to dance. So that I could. That's
always been the underlying theme in your shows because you are first and foremost a dancer.
Yeah.
Well, there's so many areas that I want to touch upon. We're going to have to bring you back for a part two. But for years, you were actively involved with the Friars in New York. How did you get involved with the Friars, and how long were you with the Friars in New York?
I'm still in the Friars Club. In fact, there was a meeting the other night.
Is it going to come back?
Oh, yeah. They're making it gorgeous. I don't know what it's going to cost us in dues, but
I just want to let everyone know that because they may not know, I actually went to the Friars. I guess it was last summer. And is that when the flood took place?
It's been about a year and a half now.
Yeah, because we were discussing an event that I was going to help produce at the Friars, and they took me into the kitchen, and I wanted to just get on my knees and cry because that gorgeous. If anyone has been lucky enough to be in that kitchen, I mean that dining room, it was completely gutted. So I do hope that they come back.
Well, it's going to be beautiful, and I hope the best for the club. I mean, I'm positive about it. I've been a member for over 25 years. I came very young. I was
which is a feat because she's only 23.
Yeah, well, don't ask.
Oh.
Um, but anyway, I was down in Florida and I was performing on Miami Vice, and then I got a job as in a review at the Konover Hotel, and that's how I met my future agent, who was Shelley Rothman. And when I got back to New York, he started sending me out. But somewhere in that time, I was interviewed by Joe Franklin, and I met Morty Storm, the comedian, and he was Frank Sinatra's court jester, kind of, sort of. And through Morty, I met Jilly Rizzo, and there's a whole big story there. But you asked me about the Friars Club and how I got into that. Shelley, my agent, he brought me into the club, and Pat Cooper seconded. So that's how I got in. And that's, there's tons of stories there too. I mean, there's no end to the stories. And that's why I wrote Laughing Through Life, because I wanted to tell my stories and I didn't want to write a book. I want to have fun with it, because when I tell my stories, I'm reliving my history. And it's
well, do you think right now, because of the time that we're living in, do you think that you would ever sit down and write a book about what you've done? Because, I mean, there are so many things. Like I said, we are only scratching the surface tonight.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know that I want to sit on my butt for that long to write a story. I don't enjoy sitting. I really don't. It bothers my body. I have to be in movement. I don't have to be doing this, but I just have to be moving. Sitting and writing is. I'm doing more of it though, because I have to. I have to write my own material. I have to, if I'm not working with a director, I have to write my own stories. There's nobody's going to be able to write my stories. Any director that I've worked with, they can rewrite my stories, but I have to tell the story as it was, and then we fudge it a little bit for the placement and the music and all that business. So. But I don't know that I'm always doing something new though. I want to develop my public speaking skills. I want to do lectures. I've done some lectures down here in Florida. I did a lecture at the Civic Center, and it was, I want to find out what people are interested in, and if it's in my vocabulary of knowledge, I'd like to develop that. And I really just want to do everything I can do with my body of work, as you put it. This is a body of work, let me tell you. It's not all my body either.
Well, I want to ask you, before we do run out of time, over the trajectory of your life and career in this business, obviously you've seen a lot of changes. What do you like most about the way the business has changed? What do you like least, and what do you miss the most that you would love to, that what you wish was still here, pandemic excluded, of course?
Well, that's a tough question, but I don't like to start with negatives, but I have to, because that's the thing that's in my mind. It's very hard to make a living in this business. And I feel that, there's a lot of things that are unfair to artists. There are people that, for example, some agents take more money than they should, and they're not fair with the artists, and people are hustling around trying to, to make it. And I don't approve of that. I think you have to do the right thing. And so I don't like that part of the business. I don't like I don't like the competition, in the sense that it's like who you know, what you do, what you pay, people paying to play. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I think if a person works hard and they have talent and they have something to show, that they should be able to do it, because it's really, the agents sometimes don't even know what the talent is all about.
Mm-hmm.
It's about how much money they can get for a person. It's so complicated. I don't like that part of it, but that's the business part. What I do like about the business is the opportunities to perform. I mean, in New York, there are so many ways to go. There's so much to do. It's fun chasing after these rainbows. It can be very discouraging, but that's why I positioned myself with my apartment, with my job, so that I could own a piece of the apple. I wasn't going to just run from this, that, and the other and not be able to support myself. I want to make that very clear, that I did not remarry, and that I made it on my own, and I'm very proud of it.
Well, that is something to be proud of.
Yeah. Doesn't mean I don't need a little help from my friends. And down here, for example, I have a manager who promotes me for my music, JM Productions. And even though, it's hard to manufacture jobs in this climate with COVID, it's nice to have somebody in your corner that believes in you. And I find that that's very heartwarming. I can't really say that I ever had that kind of relationship with a manager or an agent, and he's very warm-hearted. In New York, I have, my manager is Bob Bloom from Step Forward Entertainment. He submits me for film and TV. But in New York, it's easy to get lost in the crowd. It's very lonely. There are so many people there, and it's just like next. So did that answer your question, Richard?
It did, but one of the things that I love about you, Judy, is the fact that you have a well-rounded life. You have a life that is beyond just the performing aspect of it. You have a wonderful man in your life. You have a wonderful life done in not only in Florida, but here in New York, and you have a social life that doesn't revolve around the theater. And I think that one of the biggest downfalls for a lot of people in this business is they live, eat, and breathe it. And if you don't have, and that's important, I do too, but you need those moments that, when this interview is over tonight, I shut down my computer and, and I walk away from this world here. We're almost at the end of the show, but before we get there, there are a couple of things that I want to say. First of all, because you bring this up, I want to let everybody know that on Thursday night at 8:00, I am interviewing this gentleman here, William Dershowitz, and he's written a book called The Death of the Artist. And I really recommend that every artist who will join us because he really talked about the things that you just talked about. The fact that we undersell ourselves in this business. We give away the goods. We're putting it out there. There are those agents and managers and personal assistants and all those people who don't necessarily always have your best interest at heart in terms of their work. Yesterday I interviewed Robert Schneider, and he told, privately, shared a story with me about an event that he had done. He had reached out to a particular star, only to be told by her agent that she was not available. And then after the event happened, the star that he had pursued said, "Why wasn't I asked to be a part of this?" She didn't even know that he had pursued the agent. So really be on top of what you are doing in your business and your career, and realize that you have to be the driving force behind it. I end every show by, first of all, thanking everybody who took the time to be with us this evening. I know there's anywhere else in the world that you could have possibly be, and you chose to be with Judy and myself. So if you enjoyed the show, and if you haven't done so already, please go to my website, richardskipper.com, and put your thoughts about the show, because that helps to boost me in other markets. If you've already signed the guest book, you don't need to you do it again. But if you haven't, please do. I also end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your Facebook friends list and go to the 9th name that pops up and reach out to that person and just say, "I'm just checking in on you to see how you're doing." Because as my dear friend David Friedman says, We're all in this together, but we're not in the same boat. Also, at the bottom of the screen, Judi Mark, and it's judymark.com with an I, not a Y. Please go to her website. Please check her out. Let her know that you saw the show tonight, and get on her mailing list the next time, because she will be back in New York. She will be performing again. And if you get the opportunity to go see her perform, please, please, please do. Judy, I want to give you the last word tonight. If there's anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to talk about, now's your platform. If you have a message that you want to put out to everyone who's watching, now's your chance. Anything you want to say, Judi Mark, the spotlight is on you.
Oh, well, thank you, Richard. I did want to mention my friend Norman Bergen, who was the musical director for Old Calcutta and Tony Orlando and Dawn, and he's got a resume like forever. He wrote a song, Only a Fool Breaks His Own Heart, and he gave it to me and let me change it to her own heart. Oh, and I'm supposed to remember to say that the lyrics were written by Shelley Coburn and Norman wrote the music. Well, I'm so happy to have recorded that. I'm sorry that, maybe another time, but he's writing.
Do you want to play it for us as we go out tonight?
Oh, well, I don't have it at my fingertips.
Okay, well, then what you'll do is you'll post it on my timeline and I will share it.
All right. Well, anyway, he's writing another song for me. I wrote the lyrics. He's writing the music, and it's going to be a dance thing. So I'm very excited about that. My last words to everybody is follow your heart, use your head, and you're your best teacher.
And you're wonderful, Judy. I love you.
I love you too.
I hope this was fun for you.
Oh,
have a great night, everybody, and make it tomorrow a better day. Have a good night.
Bye.
Good night, everybody. Thank you for being here. Make it a great day and an even better tomorrow.